Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined with my usual co hosts, Zach and Emmett. We're here today to break down a little bit of the weekend with Ohio State coming into town last weekend for Coach Dantonio's name retirement into the Ring of Honor. Game didn't go as well as we wanted it to, but we'll still break it down a little bit anyways, and then switch gears over to this Friday's matchup with Oregon. Yep, we're flying out west. Not us personally, but the team is flying out west to Eugene to take on the Ducks. Another tough matchup for MSU football, but we'll get into that. And Zach, Emmett, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing, Emmett?
Pretty good. Better than expected, honestly. Might not show up on the box score watchers, but I think it was a better game than advertised.
Yeah, and there was a lot of fun happening in East Lansing this weekend. I know Emmett and I were both in town. Emmett doing his usual press, and I was just kind of hanging around campus, having a little fun during the day, and it was great to see a lively tailgate activities before a big night game. Of course, a ton of former players were in town. I just want to touch base on that really quickly before we start. It was nice to see so many players. Former Coach Dantonio standouts in town. To honor him, I don't know if you guys saw, but MSU Athletics shared a post, and Darren Harris also tweeted it. But it showed a nice little photo op they had from the ceremony the night before at the Tom Izzo football building. And was a really big turnout. I know a friend of the podcast, Matt Sabert, was in town, and he kind of gave us a little bit of a nice up close look at what was happening, and it looked like the boys had a lot of fun. I saw Brian Lewerke and his crew were in town doing a nice little tailgate, so a lot of fun, a lot of good vibes before the game, some less maybe good vibes during the game, but that happens. Ohio State's a very good football team. And it was a fun weekend all around for former players and nostalgia, just really honoring Coach Dantonio. Do you guys have anything to add about that?
Of that, we can say friend of the program, Matt Seibert. I think that's really cool that we get to say that. So, first off, just want to say that. But no, it's absolutely well deserved. Everyone kind of knows the impact that Coach Antonio had on the football team, had on the university. You can honestly maybe even argue he had a bigger impact on the university as a whole than maybe as a football coach. You see it as the players come back, how much they mean to him. It's just one of those things that, like, he's going to be remembered for a long, long time. You can argue he's one of the best coaches in Michigan State football history. He has the most wins, obviously, in Michigan State history as well. He's just done so much for this university, so much for this football team, and he absolutely deserved this honor to be just like a long weekend against a team in Ohio State that he won some of his biggest games against. Now, of course, the game didn't go as well as some of the games that he coached, but we can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, it was a great atmosphere. Great to see all these former players back in town. I know Matt Seibert mentioned like he was sitting by Noah Sargent. So everyone from Connor Cook, the Rose Bowl winning quarterback, to a walk-on who played with the team during, say, the lesser successful years when you look at the win-loss column. So it was great to get to see everyone get to be a part of it, and obviously, like Zach said, the game didn't go as well, but at the same time, it was great. It was great for the program to get to have all these players back to recognize Coach Dantonio. He was Michigan State football and he helped redefine winning and a new legacy of Michigan State football, and we are trying to get back to that now under Coach Smith. So I think it was a great atmosphere. The one confusing thing for me was how they have Coach Dantonio's name with all the players as opposed to on the other side, the press box side, with the two former coaches. That was a little confusing to me. I don't think anyone's gotten a clear answer on why, but maybe we'll see in upcoming weeks.
Yeah. Hey, But you guys pretty much said it, and I'll just wrap it up to before we get into Ohio State. But it's nice to see Coach D finally honored. It really is. He's meant so much to the program, and like you said, Emmett, having some of the more bigger names like the Connor Cooks, the Brian Lewerkes, the names that everybody recognizes, down to former walk-ons and practice squad players, just really shows exactly how much Coach D meant to his players. I know through Matt, we got to, I'm not sure if you were there, Emmett, but I got to talk to one night, Josiah Price was kind of chatting with us online, and even though he couldn't make it back, he was really hopeful he could. Josh Butler kind of echoed the same thing with his schedule with the Cowboys, wouldn't necessarily let him travel home, but players that even the ones that couldn't make it were sitting there saying, man, I really wish we could get back for this. It's something I really want to do. And not to mention just to be there for Coach Dantonio, but also to see the guys and their teammates and brothers they really grew up with and played with for a long time. So I was happy to see a lot of the players get to have that moment and have that weekend to kind of come back and experience a little nostalgia from the college years and have a lot of good time with friends and family. So awesome weekend for that. Congratulations to Coach Dantonio. I certainly appreciate what he's done for the university. I know you guys do too. And it was great to see him get some more flowers that he deserves. So enough of that. We'll get to the breakdown. MSU, like I said, tough game. They fell short to the Buckeyes. Final score 38-7. Score indicates that it may have been a little bit of a blowout, but really the game doesn't necessarily go along with that. MSU was actually driving to go into half. If a couple of plays would have went a little bit better, you could have seen the Spartan teams go into the half down 3 points. And I think in the first half we were really keeping with Ohio State. And to me, in a lot of instances, you saw a lot of good to where this team can hang with some of the big boys in the conference. It's not yet there. It's in their DNA, but it's going to take some time to learn. Some mistakes happened, young type of player mistakes. Also some execution issues. Of course, the injuries that we've had the weeks before, they're catching up with us. We weren't the most deep team in the world going into this season, and you lose offensive line starters and cornerback starters. You're going to experience it against teams like this. So overall, I thought there were a lot of encouraging things, some not so encouraging things as you would expect with a 38-7 loss. But a couple of things I did want to hit on. The good for me, like I mentioned it shows we can hang with teams like this at times. This weekend be another big test. I mean, Oregon's a top 10 school. They're a really good football team, so it'll be interesting to see what we can do against them on the road in a hostile environment. But I think there's the talent is there and the DNA is there, and so let's see what happens with it. A couple players that I thought did really well this week. I wanted to just shout out my personal, players of the week, if you want to call it. Jordan Turner was everywhere. I know you guys will touch on that more. He looked fantastic on defense. I think he had got named, and Emmett will clarify for me, but I think he was selected as a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, I believe, and rightfully so. It was a fantastic performance from him. Freshman Justin Denson had a really good game, too. I thought he was flying to the ball and in a lot of plays. I think he showed a lot of potential and hopefully earned a little bit more playing time down the stretch, because I thought he was our third to maybe second best corner overall. And the talent for him is through the roof. And then got to shout out Ryan Eckley, our punter for the brand, making spectacular punts. I think he had, looks like 5 punts, averaged about 46 yards per punt. Reason why we're punter you, I guess, because he just keeps coming along. So shout out to Ryan Eckley. Last good piece of information I want to hit. It looks like we're getting healthier. You guys will touch on it. Not a lot of big injury issues coming out of this game for once, thankfully. So we'll have to see if that can continue. Maybe we can get some pieces back healthy and have a full roster down the stretch. So a little bit of the bad. We said it. We previewed it last week. the Ohio State receivers. They had their way. Not a lot of big shots were given up, not a lot of big plays like you've seen in past, but they were able to drive the field. Will Howard was able to dink and dunk. What do you have? I believe there was 400 and almost 500 total yards of offense for Ohio State. That was going to be the Achilles heel, and you saw it. And then the rest just executing on offense, making plays, getting the extra block, getting the extra set, running the routes a little bit crisper, could have led to some bigger plays for us. And then, correct me if you've heard, or tell me if you've heard me this before, turnovers. They bit us again. Aiden was a lot more accurate. I think he went like 13 of 19, I believe. He had one pick. There were some fumble issues in the game. So that's what I had. Guys, give a little bit better of the breakdown. Zach, what do you think?
I think you kind of touched on a lot of the game. I honestly think, and this might be kind of an opinion that might not a lot of people agree with, but I honestly think that this was probably Aiden Childs' best game at Michigan State overall. I thought that he made some really smart decisions that he wasn't necessarily making earlier on in the year. He didn't really force any passes besides kind of like the late interception that he had. I didn't really think that was that huge of a deal. I think he just kind of overshot on a screen, on a running back screen. Outside of that, I thought he made some really smart throws. Now, some people might say, like, the fumble that he had, you could very much argue that face mask kind of caused the fumble. The face mask that was right in front of the ref that absolutely should have saw it. It called it late in the second half or second quarter. Not going to blame this game on the refs at all. I do think there was some kind of important calls that were missed against Michigan State. You could maybe argue that there was a really bad holding call that was missed against Ohio State as well in this game as well. Again, not saying that this game was won or lost because of those calls. Absolutely, that was not the case. But kind of was one of those things where it's kind of funny where you're like, Ohio State doesn't need the extra little help here to win this game. They already have the better team. Kind of funny that they missed those calls right in front of their faces, but I'm going to digress from there. But I thought Aiden Childs overall was pretty good in this game. Like you were saying, Chris, overall, I think turnovers were an issue. Jack Belling had a fumble. I don't really think that is something that fans should be too concerned about. I think he's been very good. You also have Malik Spencer missing basically an easy interception in the red zone early on in this game when Michigan State really needed momentum. Ohio State scores a little bit later after that. But overall, I think it's kind of a lot to do with, one, mistakes, but this offense, I think this game, especially in the first half, I think you really have to look at this game kind of in two lenses, the first half, the second half. The second half, you could kind of tell there was really a kind of a big difference between both of these teams. I think a lot of it had to do with kind of the score being 24-7 at half. I just think they kind of ran out of energy a little bit. I don't want to say they stopped trying. I don't think they absolutely did, but it's kind of tough when you're playing a top 5 team in the country when the score should be a lot closer than it is. But that first half, I think it really shows that this offense can compete and score against some really, really good defenses in this country. I think Ohio State has a really good defense. They have a really good secondary. Jaden was able to throw the ball all over the field. We were able to run the ball even a little bit. Like that first drive, I believe it was either that first or second play. We had like a 15, 20-yard run to start out the game. So we were able to run the ball a little bit again, though I think defensively is where this game was lost for Michigan State. Again, it's really hard to play against this Ohio State team. Like you were saying, Chris, you got Emeka Ibuka. Jeremiah Smith is honestly probably better than Marvin Harrison Jr. was when he was a freshman, in my opinion. He's just going to be a special, special player. Good thing Michigan State won't have to play him again unless we go to a Big Ten championship, because we don't play Ohio State until 2027. Jeremiah Smith will not be at Ohio State when he's a senior. I'm calling that absolutely right now. But I think the main thing on defense is we just couldn't get off the field on third down. That was a main issue. We had some third and mediums, third and shorts. Third and shorts are definitely tougher to stop, but we had some third and mediums, third and longs that we just couldn't get off the field. And if you get off the field there, maybe this game ends up being a little bit closer. But yeah, that's overall good. Some bad. Just Michigan State football.
Yeah, watching the game from the press box, honestly, there was a lot of things that stood out to me. The main being that Jordan Turner was arguably the best defensive player on the field when you have a top 15 corner top 15 pick in the draft, most likely in Denzel Burke. Jordan Turner was the star on defense. I know Ohio State had like 4 sacks. Burke almost housed his one interception. But Jordan Turner was everywhere. He was like, to clarify on what Chris said, he was named to the All Big Ten team, which they name like kind of like how there's an All Conference team at the end of the year. They did an All Big Ten team of the week since everyone was playing conference.
Yeah, that's what it was.
No worries. Turner had that pick right after I believe that was after the Child's fumble, which led to a one-play, 12-yard touchdown drive on a screen to Jerron Glover, who was back this week. Speaking of Glover, he got targeted 4 times and had caught all 4 for 53 yards against Ohio State. He looked like he was a piece that MSU desperately needed in their loss to Boston College. Overall, I agree with what Zach said of once they got to the locker room at halftime, down 17 points, I feel like especially even watching it, I didn't really feel like it was a 17-point game at half. I felt like it was a 3 or a 7-point game. And then you get to the locker room, you see that score on the scoreboard when you're walking back in, and it kind of settles in of, oh, this is a top 5 team. So I wouldn't say they stopped trying or anything, but at the same time, it becomes more insurmountable when you have that time to sit down and think, which is what halftime kind of gave. Overall, we lost this game by losing a couple yards every down, as opposed to getting beat over the top for 65 yards and then 3 and outing on offense every single possession. We would drive the ball and have a turnover, or drive the ball and have to punt after a first down or 2. The lack of a run game certainly hurt us. At the same time, we were playing 2 true freshmen, in one of which was in their first career game. The other one had only saw action against Prairie View A&M with Rakeem Johnson and Rustin Young. Both of them stepped up, played really well at left tackle for the team. That's something to certainly watch in the future. I think those 2 will be phenomenal pieces. I tweeted that out midweek, going through a couple of their the last 3 downs where they got to play against players who were closer to their current age, with Ohio State's backups in. So I think both Young and Johnson are going to be really good in the future on the line. But MSU's lack of a run game and putting everything on Aiden Childs did come back to bite them at the very end. But 38-7, it did not feel as bad as the previous 2 losses I've been at for Spartan Stadium, which was a loss to Washington in 2023, the first game after Mel Tucker got fired. We know how that one went. And then Minnesota in 2022, which was the game where the Spartans were getting shut out 31-0 before like a touchdown with 50 seconds left prevented it. So overall, it did not feel like a loss in the Tucker era where you just got the brakes blown off you. You had no chance. This definitely felt like there was a lot of progress, and the team has a direction, which is something that, especially like OSU 2021, the team was like, well, we're 10-1 and have no direction. So it definitely felt a lot better.
Yeah, it definitely did, and it was just weird. By the end of the game, I was sitting there thinking, going, yeah, we lost by 31 points, but dare I say, felt encouraged, or at least I didn't feel, like, well, that's, yeah. I didn't feel upset about it or nothingness like it would have been in the past. It just, hey, I see the direction. I know there's work that needs to be done. I didn't go into this game thinking we were going to necessarily beat Ohio State. unless some craziness happened or, I guess any given Saturday. But 9 times out of 10, we are winning that game, and that's what happened. It's fine. I did like a lot of things that happened, and the hope is you keep learning from the good or learning from the bad and keep doing the good, and maybe the Oregon game's closer than you think, or maybe you start stringing a couple of good things together, and in a few weeks when we play the team down the road and we've learned a few things and can go in and beat, albeit maybe a down Michigan team, but still a good football team. So, it's how you learn and how you get better. And hey, you might not see the results even this year, but these games need to happen this year. So then next year, or the year after that, we're where we need to be competing for Big Ten championships and winning these games every once in a while. So, I did like the penalties too. I don't know if I mentioned that too much with 2 penalties for 19 yards, it looks like, if I'm seeing that right. So that got cleaned up quite a bit, and it needs to stay like that moving forward because as we knew in the front part of the season, penalties killed us in a lot of things. So if that can continue, that's a great sign. Again, hopefully the turnover was cut down and we can string together some drives that actually end in points. I know that sounds bad, but like you said, Emmett, you'd see a drive, we drive, almost the length of the field, and then all of a sudden something happens and we're not coming away with points. And it means the offense is encouraging. It's got the pieces there, but you got to come away with points. Every point matters in games like these. So hopefully that's something that can be fixable moving forward. And then,
Exactly.
Yep, go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to say exactly, and I think kind of going off of points, I think that's one of the conversation that some people are having about the early decision to go for it on 4th and 1 early on in this game, and I really like that decision. Jonathan Smith basically said, hey, you don't win these games by kicking field goals, and I think it's true, but this was just a different type of game, different feel to it. It was just not like what we've seen in the past against Ohio State, where it's like we just give up big play after big play after big play. This was more like, I don't want to say like death by 1,000 cuts, but it kind of was. They kind of just continued to drive down the field a little bit. I know Ohio State did have some big plays in this game, a couple big runs, a couple of big passes, but it's not like we're giving up 50, 60, 70-yard receptions defensively. So it's just a different type of game, different type of loss, and I think that's where you guys are talking about how it's a whole different type of direction of this team. There's kind of a game plan, and while you could argue maybe Ohio State doesn't have as great of a quarterback as they have had in the past, outside of maybe, I know last year the quarterback position for Ohio State, McCord, was pretty solid, pretty good. I know he's actually doing pretty well at Syracuse too. They haven't had a C.J. Stroud come into the door for a little while either.
Yeah, and one last thought I had on that. It's worth mentioning that MSU's top blocking tight end, Michael Masunas, was out that game. Stanton Ramil practiced on Friday, but he did not play in that game. So the Spartans were starting a true freshman left tackle and missing their blocking tight end who could help on chipping, etc. So I was expecting, honestly, a 7 or 8 sack performance by Ohio State, and they ended the game with 4. That's a testament to both Child's ability to move around in the pocket and Rakeem Johnson, Rustin Young, Luke Newman at left guard, that entire side of the line for being able to hold their own. Brennan Parachek performed admirably at tight end. I believe he had 2 catches for 27 yards during the game as well. So, really good signs considering it's a position you don't really think about until you need it. And the blocking tight end role being absent certainly could have sunk the Spartans. And they did a great job to address that hole and do a great job running it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say, and coming out of that game too, with Coach Smith announcing no big injuries really coming out of there, and it just seems like the last few games before that, every week, you come in, Coach Smith comes to his press conference and said, yep, so-and-so is probably out for an extended period of time, long period of time, season ender. that didn't happen this week. So hopefully the health can come back. It seemed to me, and I'm not an expert or a doctor or anything, but it seemed to me Stanton Ramil was maybe more a cautionary thing. Like hopefully he can go sooner than later. I think the same with Michael Masunas. I didn't hear what exactly it was, but I think by all indications we all thought they were going to play this week. So to me, it being a last second thing hopefully is a good sign. Nick Marsh playing obviously was good. I know he didn't get a ton of work, but he did get some, and hopefully can keep getting healthy with that ankle. And then John Glover obviously coming back was a good sign too, because the depth at receiver was getting thin, and with those two welcoming back was nice to see. So any other Ohio State pieces before we move on, guys?
No, not really. I was just going to say having those hopefully not long-term injuries are going to hopefully be helpful. Hopefully we get Maverick Hansen back this week. We will see if he does come back, but I think he's going to be a huge factor in this Oregon game, because this Oregon offensive line has kind of figured out a little bit. Like and I was telling you guys before we were recording, if this game was a few weeks ago, let's say MSU is where they are right now, this game was a few weeks ago where Oregon was, this is a game, not saying it's an upset alert, but this is a game that you kind of have to look at and you're like, okay, like I can see a way that Michigan State can win this game. Am I saying that it's not there right now? No, I think Jonathan Smith, I think with his familiarity with Oregon, obviously coming from Oregon State, Tanner Miller, obviously you have Jack Belling, obviously Aiden Childs, of course, as well. I think this game might be a little bit more to those kind of four. I think they kind of understand Oregon a little bit. You remember a few years ago, Oregon State ended up having a late comeback in the second half, ended up upsetting Oregon, a surprise. So it's not something like this team hasn't done, or Jonathan Smith hasn't done it before. He has. I just think there's going to have to be one of those games where I think you're going to have to get a lot of these guys back. Some of the long-term injuries won't be back, but Nick Marsh hopefully will be healthy by then. Hopefully Maverick Hansen. I think he's extremely important on this defense. You saw when he went out, Ohio State just started to attack that interior defensive line, and that's where Michigan State overall, before this kind of game, before kind of giving up about 3 big run plays, is kind of been their strength. And if you look at Oregon's, their weakest point until like the last few weeks, until they absolutely stomped Oregon State, which we can talk about a little bit if we want to. We don't have to. Just because I know there's a little kind of rivalry between Oregon State, Michigan State, maybe some, I don't know if rivalry, but some Twitter banter between the two teams. So won't really talk about that too much though. And then they went and beat UCLA as well, which I think UCLA was predicted to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and they won 34-13 against them. So if this was a few weeks ago with that offensive line, I would feel a little bit better going into this game. They've kind of switched up offensive line, and they also have a quarterback in Dylan Gabriel that's very good at protecting the ball. Has 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, a little under 1,200 yards passing. Jordan James is their main running back, a little under 400 yards rushing. They kind of spread the ball around offensively, except Tex Johnson is kind of really their main guy receiving. But yeah, this Oregon team is playing much better than they were a few weeks ago. And honestly, kind of sad, because I would love to play Oregon a few weeks ago if this team was where they are kind of at right now. So I think we can give predictions later, but this is just a tough game.
Yeah, you would really want to follow a game like Ohio State up with maybe an easier opponent than another top 5 to 10 team. But that's not the nature of the new Big Ten. We're going to get games like this week in, week out, quite a bit over the next foreseeable future. So better get used to it now, I guess. But Zach, you kind of hit it on the head. Dylan Gabriel does not turn the ball over a lot. It's expected from someone who's played in college football for as long as he had. He started his career at UCF when Brian Lewerke was still here playing quarterback for Michigan State, if that gives you any indication of how long Dylan Gabriel's been around for. But he plays like the veteran he is. And if you saw Oregon's offense last year and how Bo Nix ran it, and safe, easy throws, not necessarily pushing the ball downfield a ton, high percentage throws, a lot of completions, this offense does a lot of things very similarly. I will say Dylan Gabriel has a lot more of a run threat to him than Bo Nix did. But, Bo Nix set the NCAA record for completion percentage last year. And right now, Dylan Gabriel's on pace to break that. He's completing, I think, like 80-something% of his passes right now. And that's a ridiculously good statistic. But when you dive deep into it a little bit, I think he's only thrown like 13 passes or 14 passes maybe further than 20 yards down the field. They don't push the ball down the field, which I think could at times benefit this secondary of MSU's. But unfortunately, the problem with that is you have to be quick to the ball. You have to make plays. You have to tackle the first time. You cannot miss tackles. And unfortunately, just the way Oregon's offense protects and runs, I can see a lot of similarities of what Ohio State did to us with the checkdowns and moving down the field in smaller chunks and not these big, huge break plays. That being said, the receivers at Oregon are not Jeremiah Smith or sorry, I keep wanting to say Jeremiah Fears, but it's not never that. Or Emeka Ibuka. The wide receivers at Ohio State are very talented. Not saying anything against the Oregon receivers, they're very good as well, but they're not to that tier. So maybe that steers into MSU's favor. I don't know. Chuck Brantley, Ed Woods, if Denson gets a little bit more playing time, whoever's lining up at corner next week, they're going to have to play, and I hate using the term a lot of that bend, don't break defense, but wrap up and tackle the second you can and not allow these plays to kind of keep you on the field longer than they have to be. Like Emmett said, it was just a couple of inches on a lot of plays that did us in last week. If you can correct that, and hopefully help, maybe stop them 1 or 2 yards shorter on every reception, that will keep you from staying on the field a little bit longer than you need to. Hopefully. Also, getting to Dylan Gabriel is going to be key. Hopefully, Maverick Hansen's back to help kind of shore up the middle. We got to put pressure on them. I said Dylan Gabriel can run. He's very athletic, so it's going to be hard to maybe get him to the ground, but it is possible. So, hopefully we can attack that and maybe keep it close in that regard. I will say Oregon's secondary is really good. So Nick Marsh and John Glover and company are going to have their hands full. If I was Brian Lindgren, I would maybe look to see how much more I could utilize the tight ends. Jack Velling having experience going against Oregon. Same with Aiden Childs. Maybe the tight end game could work a little bit better than trying to rely on your receivers to get open as much. Just a thought. I'm not the biggest football expert in the world, but the corners are very talented for Oregon. So we will see. Penalties also are going to be paramount because you do not want to stay on the field longer than you have to, as I said. So I don't think I said it when I started rambling here, so I apologize, but MSU is currently a 23.5-point underdog. Again, the game is Friday night at Oregon. I think that's a 9 p.m. East Coast kick. Or is that too late? So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah, thank you. I had it in front of me, and then I switched off of it. But 9 o'clock kick, so 6 o'clock on the West Coast. But us Eastern time zone folks have to wait till 9 p.m. for the kickoff. I'm excited to see how Jonathan Smith responds. I know he's familiar with Oregon. He seemed to really adapt well to that rivalry there. It's called the Civil War in Oregon. It's a very heated rivalry. That was one of the things that kind of drew me to him being at Oregon State and then coming over to Michigan State, hoping he could take on some of that mentality of the quote-unquote little brother mentality and beat up on that bigger name brand. So I know he takes pleasure in it. I know the Oregon transfers or Oregon State transfers are going to really kind of want to stick him again with this one. So could be interesting. Over under for this game is also 53 for those betting heads over there. And I'll give maybe a bet later or picks later when we talk about our picks. But it's going to be a tough task. It really is. I know I gave you some keys on how we could keep it close, and I think it's possible, but doesn't necessarily bode well for maybe winning the game, but there is a path. So, Emmett.
The main thing that looking at it, MSU has to find a way to learn from last week in the inability to get off the field on third down. Another key is also, like Zach and Chris have both said, Maverick Hansen. We saw on Saturday night, right after Hansen went down with an injury, Henderson broke like a 35-yard run. The defensive tackles, mainly Maverick Hansen, Daquan Dowse, Raquan Buckley, those three in particular need to take up the role of the MSU people leader, the one run-stopping defensive tackle in the group. All three of them have that upside. This would be a great game where if we had someone like Derek Harmon, who is now playing for Oregon, this would be a great game to see where he would be at. Harmon is the second leading tackler actually for Oregon heading into this game, has 2 sacks on the season. It's just going to be if the secondary can play better, if Maverick Hansen is at full health. He did come back into the game Saturday night for the last OSU punt. He was on the field. Hopefully that's a sign that he'll be good to go. I mean, we saw Nick Marsh playing against Prairie View and then out the next week, so not 100% sure on that, but it was good to see him on field after that injury on Saturday night. I don't know if MSU necessarily has the ability to outright win this game, but I do think that they would keep it close and hopefully have learned from their loss to Ohio State and have that ability to finish, have that ability to hold on to the ball, because I think MSU could either be within a score or tied at half and really turn some heads heading into the second half of the year. Because remember, this marks the halfway point of the year after this game for Michigan State football. They get a bye week to get healthy before starting the second stretch. So this is going to be a true test to see how they can end after starting 3-0 and then dropping 2 in a row. How will the Spartans respond before the second half of the season kicks off the next week?
Yeah, before I let you jump back in, Zach, sorry to interrupt you, but I did want to point out too. I know we've said it a million times on this show, and I feel like that's just going to be the theme of this season. When you look at it in segments, we did the first 4-game segment and we went 3-1, and that was about where anybody would have wanted us to be. We said this next segment of games, the Ohio State at Oregon, then you got a bye, but then you come home for Iowa for homecoming and then go to Michigan. These 4 games, it wasn't that out of the picture to see this team going 0-4. I don't think anybody would be too shocked in that. I don't think anybody would be happy with that by any means. I think the next 2 games are more winnable than Oregon and Ohio State would have been. That doesn't mean they're going to be easy to win. So unfortunately, BC was what it was, but you take what you can from the Ohio State game. You take what you can from this game. The longer you keep it close, the more you believe that you can get it done. If you can keep it within a 1-score game late into the third quarter, all of a sudden you've got Coach Smith on the sidelines and his staff preaching, we've been here before. We know what it takes to beat this team. The players from Oregon State, Aiden Childs, Tanner Miller, Jack Belling, you know what it takes to finish this game off. Let's go out and do it. You get into a fourth quarter in a 1-score game, anything can happen. Things tense up. Players start playing a little bit tighter. The good ones can calm down and maybe stay loose, and you never know. Aiden doesn't seem like one so far that really lets the pressure get to him too much. So I think if you can keep it as close as you can for as long as you can, you have a shot. And if you can come out and be fearless and make plays and execute, then hey, we could be jumping for joy and have a very fun podcast to record next week. But it's albeit not likely, there's paths, and I think, it's even if you lose this game, you take what you can from it, and there will be a lot of learning experience from these last two games to work on in the bye and hopefully apply to Iowa and Michigan in the next coming weeks.
Exactly, and like you were talking about, Chris, I also do think we also mentioned that during the season it kind of can change a little bit, like expectations kind of in those chunks too. I think honestly at this point, from what we've kind of seen so far, I would kind of be a little bit disappointed if we go 0-4. Like at this point, I know Oregon with what they're looking at, like, but I think this team has a possibility of winning one of these next three. Do I think Oregon is the most likely? Absolutely not. I think it's the least likely that they do it. But I think if you look at these next three games, I think you should win at least one. Will you be a favorite in any of them? Maybe, probably not. I can kind of see Iowa at home possibly being really close. Michigan on the road, probably spread will probably be a little bit bigger there. But Iowa at home, we know how good that defense is, but that offense, it's Iowa. I don't think anyone's going to really be too shocked with that offense, even though that they changed offensive coordinators. But yeah, let's kind of give our predictions for the games. I think this game will be a little bit closer than Ohio State. I think Oregon will end up winning this game, though. I think it's going to be probably something like 30 to like 17, kind of. I think Michigan State should be able to score a little bit more. I think this defense should be able to prevent Oregon from scoring a little bit more than what Ohio State did. I still think this team loses this game. I just think Oregon's just got a little bit too much. I'm actually going to go back to, because he's Oregon State, I'm going to go back to my regular prediction of Jack Belling scoring a touchdown. I think he finally gets his first against a team that I'm sure he, Aiden Childs, and Tanner Miller all three do not necessarily like too much. How about you? What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Emmett.
I was also thinking right around the 30-17, 31-17 area, Zach. I'll go with 38-17 just so it's not too bunched up. I do think MSU could very well put up all 14 or 17 of their points in the first half. The one issue I have saw that's a recurring theme with the Spartans this year is their inability to score in the second half. Coach Smith was actually asked about that in the press conference. It was pointed out to him that the Spartans on average put up about 16 points in the first half and then only put up 5 in the second, which is obviously, anyone who watches football knows, averaging 5 points in a half is not a good stat. So I think that the Spartans give Oregon a scare in the first half, but I don't think that they're going to be able to compete for all 60 minutes quite yet in year one of a rebuild. I think the team has the excitement, but hasn't quite put it all together and is missing too many pieces with multiple defensive backs and linemen out. I will say 38-17. First touchdown scorer, I feel like mixing it up. Give me Jerron Glover for a receiving touchdown.
Alrighty. So I guess if you want to call this my bold prediction of the week, it's not it's not that bold. The longer you go, it's kind of echoing what I just said. The longer you go in this game where it's close within a score, maybe 10 points, the more likely it is that I think that MSU wins the game outright. Do I think that's necessarily going to happen? No. I will say MSU, I think, may cover the spread, 23.5 right now. I give me MSU. I'm torn. This one's honestly a tough one for me. Give me Oregon to win. Let's go 28-17. Yeah, we'll go 28-17. I just think that, I don't know. I just got a weird feeling. I can't really explain why, and it's not we're gonna win this game feeling, but I think we keep it closer than people think. I don't know why. I think if healthy, our defense can succeed in spots where it wouldn't have even this past week against Ohio State. I say that now. If Maverick Hansen doesn't play, don't necessarily maybe hold me to that, because I think he's a big key of this. But I just think it's possible that we hold it a little closer than people think. If I will say, if you see me and it's we're down by 4 with about 8 minutes to go, not only will I have an alcoholic beverage in my hand, but I will be fully convinced we're winning the game. So I guess tune into my Twitter to see where my mental state is Friday night. But no, I will go Oregon to win, 28-17. First touchdown, give me Aiden Childs rushing touchdown. Or leave it open, Aiden Childs anytime touchdown. Maybe we'll throw in a Jared Goff reception touchdown style. I don't know, but I think Aiden Childs is going to find some touchdowns in this game. I also think Coach Smith really wants to compete in this game, and I think the Oregon State players are going to try as much as they can to get as much as they can done. So hopefully it's close. Hopefully we can go into the bye building some things. But that's the Oregon preview. That's the Ohio State wrap-up. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Hockey season does start right around the corner. We're hoping to get you some hockey-related content next week, because I've been promising you guys we got a couple ideas in store before next weekend's big series against Boston College. Top 5 matchup in East Lansing. Those of you who will be in East Lansing next weekend, check it out. I think the tickets are sold out, maybe. I'm not sure. But if they're not, you should go. So Mon will be rocking. It'll be a lot of fun. That's all I really had. Any final thoughts, guys?
Just one quick thing. If you're listening to this before 6 p.m. tomorrow, Midnight Madness in East Lansing, you also have the camp out for the students as well. I don't know if we have any students that listen, but you got the ISON camp out too. So 6 p.m., doors open at the Breslin, starts at 7. You can go there, then maybe make your way all the way back to either at a restaurant, back to your home, watch MSU at 9. Know that probably some people are going to be making that trip. So going to be a fun day tomorrow for Michigan State sports, but going to be interesting to see what this team can do.
Yep. One more basketball thing I got. I did see that Michigan State and North Carolina agreed to a Thanksgiving match next year, I believe, as part of a series tip-off. So that will be fun. And then for basketball fans, maybe keep an eye down the road. 2027, I believe 2027 Final Four. Could be 2028. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. One of those 2 years, the Final Four and National Championship game is coming back to Detroit and will be at Little Caesars Arena.
27 is Final Four. 28, I believe they have round of 16 and Elite 8, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, that's what it was. They announced the 2 years, and I was getting you mentioning basketball made it pop back in my mind, so I was running off the top of my head on that one. But all right, well, we'll do it for us. No press box Emmett this week. We apologize, but Oregon is just too far away to ship him out to. We don't have the postage stamps to mail him out there either, so we will have Emmett in Michigan this week. He will be back to his regularly scheduled press box program for the Iowa game and for homecoming in a couple weeks. Again, next week is a bye. We will still have an episode for you next week, maybe a little bit of a recap, plus hockey-related stuff, basketball-related stuff. Then we'll be back on our football schedule each week. So in the meantime, check us out on our socials. We thank everybody for listening. Any questions, anything, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to answer. So that'll do it, everybody. Have a good night. Go Green.
Go White.
Go White.